She showed kindness to a homeless man on the street. She gave him food, shelter, and care as if he were family. Many people told her to stop helping him, but she ignored their advice. She continued to support him with whatever she had. What no one realized was that this man's real identity was far from ordinary. He wasn't just another homeless stranger. His true background would leave everyone stunned. If you're just joining us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, give this story a thumbs up, and let us know where you're watching from. The streets of Lagos were always alive. Even when the sun dipped behind the skyline, the air pulsed with hawkers shouting, car horns echoing, and the constant hum of city life. Yet for Adobe, the world grew quiet the moment she sat at her sewing machine. Her tiny tailoring shop, tucked between a fruit stall and a small kiosk selling recharge cards, was her entire universe. She owned little, but she carried dignity, purpose, and above all, compassion for others. That evening, as most shop owners closed for the day, Adobe remained behind, working late to finish a wedding gown for a customer who could barely afford it. She never asked much for her services. She only wanted people to feel beautiful, especially those often overlooked. It was past 9 p.m. when she heard it. A faint cough, then a groan. Looking up from her stitching, she noticed a man slumped under the flickering street lamp outside. His clothes were torn, his body thin, his beard unkempt. He looked no older than 35, yet hardship had left deep lines on his face. "Jesus," Adobe whispered as she rushed outside. People walked past, some glaring with disgust, one woman pulling her child closer. "None stopped, sir," Adobe said softly, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered open, revealing weary but gentle eyes. "I haven't eaten in 3 days," he rasped. Without hesitation, Adobe helped him up. He resisted, embarrassed, but his weak legs gave way. "Please, I don't want to trouble anyone," he murmured. "You're no trouble," she replied firmly. "You're human." She guided him into her shop and laid him on a mat she used during late sewing nights. From her food flask, she offered bread and warm Gary. He stared at her, confused. "Why are you helping me?" he asked weakly. Adobe smiled. "Because someone once helped my mother, and I promised to pass that kindness on." Tears filled his eyes as he sipped slowly. "My name is Chuka," he whispered. "I'm Adobe," she replied. "Rest now. Tomorrow is another day." That night she watched him sleep curled like a child on her thin mat. He had nothing, not shoes, not even a phone. Yet there was something about him, something she couldn't explain. Outside, the wind howled. Inside her little shop, two strangers from different worlds had found an unlikely connection. And behind Chuka's broken appearance, a hidden story waited to be revealed. The next morning, Lagos woke in its usual chaos. Roosters crowed against the blare of Danfo buses. Generators hummed like insects while the smell of frying akara drifted through the air. Adobe hadn't slept much. Sitting cross-legged beside her sewing machine, she studied the man still resting on her mat. In daylight, she noticed details she had missed. His nails, though cracked, were surprisingly clean. His hands, rough yet steady, didn't look like those of a man long on the streets. His face, despite the dirt and beard, carried the features of someone once admired. Who was he really? She wondered. Chuka stirred, rubbing his eyes. "You're awake," Adobe said softly. "I thought I dreamed it." "Your kindness," he muttered. She handed him a warm cup of pap, made from her last portion of cornmeal. "No dream, just kindness," she replied with a small smile. He took it with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to. Just get better," she assured him. "You don't even know me." "Maybe that's the point," Adobe said as she opened the wooden shutters of her shop. Morning light spilled in while she folded fabrics and arranged threads. Yet she felt his gaze follow her, curious, thoughtful, and quietly grateful. "I should leave before I become a burden," he said eventually. Adobe turned to him, her tone steady. "Where would you go, Chuka?" "The streets. Back to nothing." His silence confirmed the truth. "You're not going anywhere. You'll stay here and regain your strength. I'll sew you a clean shirt from some extra fabric I have. I can't let you waste your materials on me." "It's not waste," she said gently. "It's love cloth. That's what my mother used to call fabric kept aside, not to sell but to give to someone in need." He stared at her for a long moment. "You're not like other people." Adobe chuckled softly. "Maybe I'm being foolish." "No, he replied seriously. You're different. Just then the door opened and a sharp voice broke in. Aha, Adobe, so you've turned your home into an orphanage? It was Ifoma, Adai's childhood friend and the self-proclaimed queen of style in their compound. Her lips, thickly painted, curved into a grin as she spotted Chuka on the mat. Adai frowned. He was collapsing on the road. I helped him. Helped him or hiding him? Ifoma folded her arms. Look, I know you mean well, but Lagos isn't forgiving. Be careful. People like him could easily be thieves. Go focus on your makeup business. Ifoma, Adobe said more sharply than she intended. Ifoma sighed dramatically and left, her heels clicking on the concrete. Chuka lowered his gaze. Maybe she's right. She's wrong, Adobe said firmly. You don't need to share your story yet, but I trust what I feel. He looked up, emotion flickering in his eyes. You're risking yourself for someone you don't know. Maybe I see something in you that even you've forgotten. She softened. That day, she gave him a bucket of water, clean clothes she had altered, and a place near the door where he could sit and watch the street while she worked. Over the following days, Chuka regained his strength. He saw her reject wealthier clients who disrespected her, watched her slip food to children whose mothers couldn't pay, and listened as she hummed songs her late mother had taught her. At night, they talked, first about small things, music, her dream of opening a boutique, his childhood love for drawing. But Chuka never revealed his past. He always changed the subject when she asked where he came from. Adobe never pushed. She simply gave him what life had denied him, dignity. Yet Chuka was torn inside. He hadn't planned to stay this long or to feel anything. But here he was, safe, fed, warm, and drawn to a woman who saw him beyond the dirt on his skin. Each time she handed him food or covered him with a wrapper at night, his inner conflict grew. Should he tell her the truth or keep the silence a little longer? She deserved honesty, but also someone who chose her openly. From across the room, he watched her trim lace under a lamp. She hadn't even realized her own beauty. Her brows knit in focus, her hands working with purpose, her spirit filling the small shop like royalty. Chuka knew one thing: this woman would change his life. And soon, her own world would never be the same. Market day came in Yaba. The streets throbbed with Lagos energy. Traders called out from busy stalls, their voices rising above the scent of roasted corn and pepper soup. Bright umbrellas shaded tables piled with tomatoes, dried fish, and fabrics of every color. Adobe moved through the crowd, basket balanced on her hip, determined. Chuka walked quietly beside her, now clean-shaven, wearing a shirt she'd sewn and sandals borrowed from a neighbor. He kept his head low, aware of the stares. But Adobe walked tall. Why are we here? Chuka asked. I need zippers and thread. Besides, you said you hadn't seen the market by day. He smiled faintly. It's louder than I imagined. Adobe grinned. This is Lagos. Noise is part of the rhythm. At Mama Ajima's fabric stall, whispers followed them. Some greeted Adobe warmly. Others eyed Chuka with suspicion. Mama Ajima, a large, outspoken woman with a wrapper tied at her waist, raised her brows. Adobe, who's this one? This is Chuka, he's a friend, she said carefully. Mama Ajima narrowed her eyes. He looks like a street boy. You're keeping company with beggars now? Adobe's chest tightened. He's not a beggar. He's just been through hard times, that's how it starts. Feed him today, tomorrow he robs your shop, Mama Ajima scoffed. You're too soft. I believe in second chances, Adobe replied steadily. Chuka stayed silent, eyes fixed on the ground. The market felt heavier, every word like a blow. A few traders chuckled. One woman whispered, So she's turned Taylor into shelter. Adobe's cheeks burned, her fist tightening around the thread. Suddenly, Mama Ajima swatted Chuka's arm with a fan. Get out before you scare my customers. Chuka flinched. His fragile pride shattered again. Enough, Adobe snapped. The market stilled. It was rare for her to raise her voice. He's a human being, not a stray dog. You insult him for what? His clothes, his past? What if God judged us like that? Mama Ajima blinked, surprised. He has done nothing to you. And even if he had, what happened to compassion? What happened to caring for each other? The crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked away in shame. I don't care what you think, Adobe said firmly, her voice trembling. Chuka is my friend. If that makes me foolish in your eyes, so be it. I'd rather be foolish for kindness than a ruler of cruelty. With that, she turned, dropped a few naira notes on the table for her supplies, and gently took Chuka's hand. "Let's go," she whispered. They walked away in silence as the crowd slowly moved aside for them. Chuka remained quiet until they were far from the market. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "Yes, I did," Adobe replied. "I've faced insults before. I'm used to it." "But you shouldn't be. You deserve better." He stopped walking. "Why?" She turned to him. "Because you're alive. Because you matter. Isn't that reason enough?" Chuka stared, words stuck in his throat. Her response broke through the walls he had carried for years. No one had stood up for him like that in a long time. "Thank you," he managed, his voice cracking. Adobe smiled faintly, though her eyes were moist. "Don't thank me. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me that when life gives you another chance, you'll take it." He nodded slowly. "I will." Hand in hand, they walked home, pushing through judgment and gossip together. By the time they returned to her shop, the sun was already dipping into a golden haze. Adobe sat at her sewing machine, pretending not to notice Chuka watching her. But he was, studying her every move, every breath, his heart racing faster than it had in years. Deep inside, a question grew louder than ever. Can she love me even after she learns who I really am? That seed of doubt planted fear. Was her kindness too pure for the truth about him? Yet another part of him, touched by her care, began to hope. The rain came down hard that Thursday morning, flooding Yaba's narrow streets as thunder rolled across the Lagos skyline. Adobe sat at her sewing machine, chin resting on her palm. There was no light, no fuel for her small generator, and worst of all, no customers. The little she had earned earlier in the week had already gone into food and medicine for Chuka, who had been coughing for days. She didn't regret it, but now the weight of her choice pressed in. A loud knock broke her thoughts. She didn't need to guess who it was. "Madam Taylor," a voice bellowed outside. She opened the wooden door to face her landlord, Mr. Oho, a stout man with a potbelly, a scowl, and bitter cola between his teeth. "Oga, good morning," she said, forcing a polite tone. "Don't greet me," he snapped. "Where's my money?" Her throat tightened. "Sir, please. It's been a hard month. Business is slow and I've had extra expenses. Just one more week, please." Mr. Oho narrowed his eyes. "You think this place is charity? Pay or pack. This is the third late payment. One more day and I'll throw your sewing machine into the street." Tears stung her eyes, but she held her ground. "Please, just a few more days." He turned, then paused. "That man you're hiding in there, maybe he can pay rent. Be careful, Adobe. Kindness doesn't pay bills." With that, he stomped away. She closed the door, leaning against it, her breath unsteady. Chuka, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally rose. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "This is because of me." "No, it's not," she replied. "This is Lagos. There's always something. You're helping me, even when you feel like you're drowning." "I'm not drowning," she lied. "Just swimming in deep waters." Chuka looked down, fists clenched. "You shouldn't suffer for helping someone like me." She knelt beside him. "You're not a burden." "Don't think that. If I had to choose between money and helping someone in pain, I'd still choose to help." He looked into her eyes and saw something he couldn't explain. Strength, calm, and grace. That night, after Adobe had gone to sleep, Chuka stood in the corner watching her rest. His mind raced. He had the power to fix everything, yet fear kept him hidden. Would she still see him the same if she knew the truth? Or would her warmth turn cold like so many others before? He reached into his torn trouser pocket and pulled out something she had never seen. A small, worn card wrapped in plastic with a phone number and a name. His driver. Pulling his hood over his head. Barefoot, he slipped into the rain. The next morning, Adobe woke to unusual silence. The rain had stopped, but Chuka was gone. Panic struck her chest. "Chuka," she called. "Chuka?" No answer. She searched the street, but he was nowhere. By noon, she feared the worst. Maybe he had left. Maybe shame had driven him away. Or perhaps he believed she'd be better without him. The thought cut deeply. He had become part of her routine, her quiet, her heart. She sat at her sewing machine, hands trembling, unable to work. The shop felt emptier than ever. Then another knock. She opened the door slowly, expecting her landlord again. Instead, it was his daughter, holding a white envelope. "Good afternoon. My papa say make I give you this." the girl said. Adobe opened it carefully. Inside were crisp Naira notes, 1 month's rent plus 2 more in advance. What is this? She whispered. The girl shrugged. Some man pay this morning. Tall, quiet, barefoot. No talk much. Just drop the money and leave. Adobe's eyes widened. Where did he go? The girl shook her head. I know. He enter Kiki and disappear. Adobe clutched the envelope tightly to her chest, breathless. It was him. Somehow it really was him. He had walked out into the rain for her. The mystery only deepened. Who exactly was Chuka? Where had he found that kind of money? And why did he keep it hidden? That night she sat on her mat, staring at the doorway long after dark, waiting for him to return. But Chuka never came back. Not that night, not the next day, not for weeks. Yet even in absence he left something behind. A quiet echo of love, a gesture of sacrifice, and a question that refused to leave her mind. What kind of beggar secretly pays 3 months' rent only to vanish into the night? 2 weeks slipped by. Adobe tried to resume her life, but the emptiness Chuka left followed her like a shadow. Each night she glanced at the mat in the corner of her shop, half hoping his gentle eyes would be there again. But it stayed empty, cold still. Every knock at the door sent her heart racing. Every unfamiliar voice outside filled her with hope. But none belonged to him. And still his presence lingered in the extra fabric he bought her before leaving, in the memory of how he quietly folded her wrapper when she fell asleep one evening, in the rent that continued to be paid month after month. Something felt off. It wasn't just that he was gone, it was the way he left, sudden, silent, like a ghost with unfinished business. Then came the men in suits. It was a bright Wednesday afternoon. Adobe had just finished stitching a baby dedication gown for a new client when 2 black SUVs stopped in front of her small shop. She looked up, startled, as 2 sharply dressed men stepped out wearing sunglasses and speaking into earpieces. They didn't belong in Yaba, not on this dusty stretch of road. People stared. The taller man approached. Good afternoon, ma'am, he said formally. Are you Miss Adobe? She rose slowly. Yes, can I help you? We're searching for someone. He goes by Chuka. Medium build, about 5'11", short hair, usually with a beard. He may have been staying here a few weeks ago. Her blood ran cold. Who are you? We work for a private security firm, the man replied. Our client hired us to locate a missing person. Our CEO disappeared around the time you mentioned. Your CEO? She whispered. Yes, ma'am. His name is Mr. Chuka Ndubisi. Adobe's breath caught. That couldn't be true. He told her he was just a beggar, homeless. The men exchanged a look. He's far from homeless. He owns one of the most powerful tech startups in Africa, a billionaire, though he avoids the word. Very private. He went missing after refusing an arranged marriage. His family has been searching everywhere, and a private investigator traced him here. Adobe's knees weakened and she sank onto her wooden stool. I had no idea, she murmured. The second man stepped forward, voice gentler. You're not in any trouble. In fact, you may have helped save him. But if he reaches out again, please tell him we need to find him. His mother is ill, his board is in chaos, and the media believes he's in Europe. Adobe nodded faintly. Okay. They handed her a sleek business card and left as quickly as they came, their SUVs fading into the dusty road. She sat frozen. Chuka, a billionaire. She looked around her tiny shop, the thin curtains, the patched table, the cracked tiles. He had lived here, slept on her mat, drunk her pap, swept her compound. She had spoken to him as an equal, cared for him as one of her own. He had hidden it all, but why? That night, silence pressed on her. A memory returned. A neighbor, Mama Kechi, once remarked, I swear that man looks familiar. Maybe from television. At the time, Adobe had laughed. Now the words haunted her. With trembling hands, she pulled out an old Nokia phone and typed Chuka Ndubisi. The connection dragged. The images blurred, but one photo finally loaded. Her heart froze. There he was, wearing a tailored blue suit, standing beside a woman in a gala dress, smiling before a banner reading Africa Rising Tech Awards. It was him. Clean-cut, confident, almost unrecognizable, yet unmistakably him. She stared at the screen until the light dimmed, her thoughts racing. Suddenly everything made sense. His quiet dignity, strong hands, intelligent eyes, the way he watched people, the sudden disappearances, the envelope of rent money. He had been hiding in plain sight, testing the world, and for some reason he chose her. But then a darker thought crept in. Was she just part of an experiment? A story to share with wealthy friends over dinner? Tears welled in her eyes. No, she whispered. He wasn't pretending. Not with me. She remembered the way he defended her that rainy day when someone tried to steal her bag, the way he wept quietly when she gave him clean clothes, the tremor in his voice when he thanked her. That wasn't the voice of a billionaire playing poor. That was the voice of a man broken, searching. But one thing was now certain. The Chuka she cared for was not a beggar. He was a man with history, with influence. And with his world now colliding with hers, everything was bound to change. Days turned into weeks and Chuka did not return. Adeobi stopped counting after the first month, yet his absence pressed on her like an unseen weight. He had become part of her quiet world. And now that he was gone, life felt dim. The hum of her sewing machine no longer brought comfort, and the cheerful laughter of children in the street seemed distant. He had disappeared like the Lagago's rain, fierce, cleansing, and gone too quickly. Though no longer present, he remained everywhere. In the folded mat at the corner of her shop, in the untouched cup she once used to serve him water, and in the silence that greeted her each morning. Adeobi tried to move on. She continued to work, welcomed her customers with her familiar smile, but it no longer reached her eyes. Something inside her had shifted, something she could not name. Her friend If noticed. "You haven't been yourself," she said one afternoon as they shared roasted plantain by the roadside. Adeobi stayed quiet. "You're still thinking of him?" If asked softly. Adeobi gave her a look. "You wouldn't understand." "I might," If replied. "I think he meant more to you than you admitted." Adeobi sighed. "He came into my life like a whisper. Quiet kind, and now he's just gone. And now you find out he's a billionaire," If teased with a smirk. "That must sting." Adeobi shook her head. "It's not about the money, If, it's about the lie. He didn't trust me enough to be honest." If's expression softened. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he thought you'd see him differently. "Would I?" Adeobi whispered almost to herself. "I don't know." That night, alone in her shop, Adeobi pulled out the business card the men in suits had given her. She stared at it for a long while, her fingers hovering over her phone. She could call, demand answers, even confront him in the world he now lived in. But she didn't. Deep down, she didn't want to chase him. She wanted him to return willingly, to choose her the same way she had chosen him when he had nothing. Far across Lagos, in the penthouse suite of one of Victoria Island's most prestigious hotels, Chuka sat by the window, lost in the night skyline. The city below glittered, alive and bright, but within him was only emptiness. He had returned to his empire of meetings, boardrooms, polite smiles, and polished headlines. But none of it felt real, not since Adeobi. His assistant tapped on the door. "Sir, your schedule." "Cancel everything tomorrow," Chuka replied, still staring out the glass. "Yes, sir." When the door shut, Chuka ran a hand through his hair. He had left to protect her, to keep her from the dangers of his powerful world, but every moment apart felt like a betrayal of what she had given him. Her warmth, her patience, her strength. She had loved him when he had nothing, seen him when the world ignored him. And now she likely thought he had used her. The thought pained him deeply. Suits, wealth, titles, they meant nothing without her. "I need to make this right," he said aloud. His decision was firm. Not a message, not a call. He had to face her, the woman who had seen his soul before the world remembered his name. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon, or so Adeobi thought. She had just finished adjusting a blouse when a delivery man appeared at her shop holding a golden envelope. "Miss Adeobi?" he asked. "Yes," she replied cautiously. He handed it to her, gave a polite nod, and left. Puzzled, she turned it over in her hands. The paper was thick, embossed with an unfamiliar crest. Breaking the seal, she unfolded the card. Her eyes widened. "You are cordially invited to the Faces of Africa Fashion Showcase, Friday 6 p.m. venue, the Orchid Grand Hotel, Victoria Island. Guest of honor, Mr. Chuka Dubisi. Special acknowledgement, Adeobi, Master Tailor, Yaba District." Her hands shook. Chuka. For the first time since he left, she saw his full name written, Mr. Chuka Dubisi, the billionaire. The man who vanished without a word was now the guest of honor at one of the nation's largest fashion events. Why had he invited her? Was it a test, a gesture, or a cruel joke? She sat staring at the invitation, her heart racing. At last she placed it carefully into her drawer and sat in silence. The night of the event arrived sooner than she expected. Adobe had nothing extravagant to wear. Her best creations were always made for others, not herself. But this time she made something of her own. A deep emerald gown, modest yet elegant with flowing sleeves and subtle embroidery. She styled her hair neatly, slipped into her only pair of heels, and after a steadying breath, stepped into a taxi she had paid for with borrowed funds. The ride to Victoria Island felt surreal. Streets widened, buildings towered, lights glowed brighter. It was a different world. When she reached the Orchid Grand Hotel, she paused, staring at the chandeliers and polished marble like someone stepping into another realm. But the usher, smiling warmly, recognized her name and guided her inside with courtesy. The ballroom was breathtaking. Golden lights shimmered, soft music played, and an elegant crowd mingled. Designers, journalists, influencers, all with glasses of champagne in hand. Adobe lingered at the back, uncertain of where to stand. Suddenly the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room as a spotlight illuminated the stage. A man in a black tuxedo stepped to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer began, "we welcome you to the 10th annual Faces of Africa Gala, a celebration of resilience, creativity, and vision. Tonight we honor a man who not only transformed the world of technology, but also reminded us of the true meaning of humanity." The audience turned. Adobe's breath caught in her throat. There he was, Chuka, wearing a simple, refined black suit. No longer bearded and barefoot, he appeared dignified, confident, and magnetic. His eyes swept across the room until they met hers. In that instant, time seemed to pause. For a brief moment, the vast ballroom belonged only to the two of them. Then Chuka stepped forward, took the microphone, and spoke softly. "I disappeared for some time, but during that journey I met someone who changed my life. She didn't see a billionaire. She didn't even know my name. She only saw a man in need, and she gave me love, dignity, and shelter without expecting anything in return." A quiet stir moved through the audience. Chuka glanced toward Adobe again, his voice unsteady. "Tonight I want the world to know who she is." Silence filled the room. All eyes shifted to Adobe, standing near the back in her green gown, stunned, breathless, motionless. Every flash of a camera and every whisper faded against the pounding of her heart. Chuka extended his hand toward her. "Please," he said into the microphone, "come forward." Adobe hesitated briefly, then with grace and composure began to walk. The crowd parted for her like a tide. Those who had overlooked her only minutes earlier now stared in awe. Who was this woman the billionaire honored? Who was this humble tailor who had captured his heart? As she reached the stage, Chuka gently took her hand, as though it were something precious. Tears welled in Adobe's eyes. "I don't understand," she whispered. Chuka smiled, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I didn't come to Yaba to test people. I came because I was broken. I couldn't trust anyone, not with my money, my name, or my heart. I needed to disappear to feel real again. And in that dark moment, God led me to you." "But why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly. "Because I feared that once you knew the truth, I'd lose the only person who saw me, not my wealth. You gave me a kind of love I thought no longer existed." Turning back to the crowd, he continued, "She fed me when she had little. She defended me when I was despised. She gave me shelter when I didn't even have a name. And through that, she reminded me who I was. Not just a businessman or a public figure, but a man capable of being loved without condition." The room fell silent. With emotion in his voice, Chuka turned again to Adobe. "I came here tonight not only to thank you, Adobe, but to ask you something." Gasps rippled through the hall as Chuka dropped to one knee and drew a small black box from his jacket. Opening it, he revealed a diamond ring that caught the light of every chandelier above. "Adobe," he said, "I may not have a mansion worthy of your heart, but I will build one. I may not have a perfect past, but I offer you my future. Will you marry me?" The room froze. Adobe looked down at the man who once slept on her mat, fevered and fragile, and who had vanished with her heart. Now he was kneeling before her, asking her to be his wife in front of the most influential people in the city. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She nodded gently. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The hall erupted in applause. Flashbulbs exploded across the stage. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment, but Adobe heard none of it. All she felt was her heartbeat and the quiet certainty in Chuka's eyes that this was real. Despite the wealth, the cameras, and the grandeur of the night, he was still the man who once sat beside her sewing machine, silently watching her stitch hope into fabric. 1 year later, Adiobi's small shop had grown into the foundation of a movement. With Chuka's support, but under her own name, she launched the Adiobi Hope Collection, training young women from the streets of Lagos in tailoring and design. The same mat where Chuka had once slept now hung framed in her office, a symbol of humility, faith, and love, because beneath the rags, behind the beard, within the silence, she had not only sheltered a homeless man, she had found a king. And in the end, it wasn't the world that changed her. She changed it.